So I thought I'd do a reading on someone that people will already know. I guess you can say she's like, I don't know what to call it. The point is, I thought I'd do a reading on their chart because I was just curious, and that's part of the thing that I want to work on. Work on? Is that even the right word for that? Basically, I'm just having fun. Teal Swan. So the chart here is a basic chart that I use with the planets that I work with. So we're going to go with the simple start off ascendant. Okay. So she has a similar ascendant as a bunch of people I know, including myself. So she's hard to read. One of those big things about Cancer Ascendant is like it's not just like the appearance and that kind of stuff. Like it's hard to read. There's a bit of a mystery to it. It's deep. It's secretive. It's quiet. Those kind of things. Obviously, as she's evolved. I haven't drawn up her progression chart yet or solar arc, which I'll eventually do. But today's it's more about the natal charts, and all the asteroids that I can analyze, interpret based on what's going on. So you can see though that her moon, because that's her chart ruler, was in the sign of Aquarius. So that makes sense. Okay, so she and I also have, like, it's really cool. Like, moon and Aquarius people. Yeah, but for her, moon and Aquarius is in the early degrees. So, and actually, I'm going to put in the transits right away. Pluto is conjuncting that right now, like today. So probably like intense emotions, and I'm pretty sure she's probably gone through something like that before, because the moon goes, it's the fastest moving planet, or luminary, and so it's no surprise that she's probably gone through a lot of that, like we all do, most likely, because if our moon is going to all the signs, and then Pluto is going to be in one specific sign. Eventually, we're gonna experience something. But these are the ones that is going to help her transform. In this case, it's continuously transforming her, probably most likely again in areas of the seventh house. So that means any sort of contract, agreement, marriages, relationships, open enemies. Those are typical things about the seventh house. The seventh house is also part of the shadow. So any sort of like work that she needs to go through. Right now, I believe the moon is going towards a full moon later. I'm sorry, a new moon. So it's starting to wax. That means like new beginnings for her, or starting to. There's a sort of and it ties in with where it actually ties in with where the moon is, first degree. So it's like new beginnings as well. It's new opportunities. Because it's in a fixed sign, it's going to be relatively slow, so to speak. It's not really, yeah, it's just, yeah. So maybe new opportunities that are coming through that kind of like she's probably already very familiar with because of her moon in Aquarius, and Aquarius moon, and actually the moon for today is transiting her own the Scorpio, the Aquarius, but in through the 8th house. So more transformation coming through, more ideas, more downloads, more innovative perceptions. Anything to do with Aquarius, thinking for, it's like whoosh, right there, and sometimes with Aquarius, it's not really easy to pinpoint what those details are. Aquarius is like the mad scientist, crazy experimentation, those kind of things. Very Uranus as well. So because of her moon in Aquarius, we have to look into her Uranus. So now that's expanded through the Sagittarian energy, which is, I guess in her early life, maybe she was kind of open to more the adventurous side of relationships. It's very weird, and if she did experience those things, I mean, I've not even looked at the squares, the aspects yet, but for sure, like Sagittarian energy is like giving it that color, so there's a bit of fire, and especially when she was younger, a very expansive, very optimistic, very spiritual, very intuitive as well. There's a lot of intuition going on there. Yeah. So and because of the sudden changes of Aquarius, it's like, psh. But we also have to look into Saturn, because Saturn co-rules Aquarius right here. So it was in Scorpio, conjunct Mars, but we're not doing that right now because of it. The coloring of it in Mars, in Scorpio, it's giving it also that flavor of like a water, deep depth. So it's not just like innovative, but with depth, a lot of transformative energy, a lot of like things that are very like risk taking. If you already sense Scorpio energy, it's that sort of energy that is very, you don't fuck with her. You don't fuck with people like that. When I say don't fuck with it, I mean not necessarily in a negative, in any negative way. It's just that you get that energy that it's like, I don't think I want to go there. It's very Pluto, right? So it's very scary. It can be scary for most people, and that's the whole thing. That's the whole point. That's the general overview. I'm sure that if you analyze it yourself, the chart, you'll see there's a lot of things going on there. Because of it, it's in Aquarius, and with the square to Mars, square to, no, just Saturn here. I'm just reading whatever I see on the chart, okay? Pluto as well. So there's this family, probably like limitations she's had. Probably that's possible. It could have been there. Intense internal processing through heritage, through her family line. Power struggles is a definite thing. Power struggles, abuse, misuse, whatever, of power. But it's more like internalized, so it's probably like things that normally would kind of come up in terms of like shadow. This would be a big thing for her. So relationships, like how she relates with, this is fourth house stuff with her family, and so because it's karmic stuff, a lot of karmic stuff, especially if it's in retrograde. It's like things coming back, and it's repeating itself. With the square in Saturn, it's almost like there's this sort of it's also karmic, but it's almost like she had to make decisions towards because it's actually conjuncting the fifth house cusp. It does bring in like ancestral heritage, DNA sort of stuff towards the fifth house. So that means that in order for her to enjoy things in the fifth house, I also have Mars close to the cusp, but I don't have Saturn there. So for her, it probably felt like she couldn't really enjoy a lot. There's a lot of probably like disciplinary sort of like in her family, which actually ties in with her own, with a descendant in Capricorn, and with this kind of like that environment of limitations, seriousness, discipline, quiet, not a lot of emotions that are expressed, a lot of distancing, a lot of it probably felt cold as a child. So and so that became sort of this kind of like distant thing. Like with her moon in Aquarius, it actually shows that the seventh house issues as well, like growing up or the surrounding environment that she was surrounded with. Any sort of thing. It could be the family, it could be people. But because the moon is in the seventh house, it also ties in with the fourth house. Therefore, yes, it's expressed through the fourth house. That whole, it can't be emotional. It can't be. It's kind of militant. It's like very. She had to have a lot of lessons that she had to grow up with. A lot of sort of. I wouldn't say slow, but that whole like. You can feel what I'm saying. Go ahead. Great. Because I can't put it in words that I know I understand, and that's just the way it is. Okay. So Saturn. There's doing that. We also have her moon square Ceres. Okay, similar to mine. So a lot of the nurturing stuff didn't really come through, especially with when it comes to reputation. So you see here 4 degrees, right? But we also have full. So both planets are getting her. She always had to kind of make certain decisions that were probably like crazy, especially in the last few degrees of Aries. Right, it's 26 degrees, so it's like crazy decision making that was kind of like spur of the moment, instinct, but had had unforeseen consequences that were just like I don't know, because her moon, it's like kind of like risk taking as well with Aquarius. With Ceres there, it's almost like she's had to go through these ups and downs of changes of like self-care. Who cares for me? Self-care. It's interesting because like let's go into her 5th house, because I know that she said in one of the interviews that she ended up what do you call this, being like a single mother, and that she's like no one should have to do that, and it's not natural. So kind of ties in with that whole with Saturn in the limitations. Okay, that's in probably like like it's like a sort of internal limitations. When I say internal, I mean like maybe possibly like self-imposed, or it's a how do you explain Saturn in retrograde? It's like the feeling of I'm creating my own limitations based on my own personal beliefs. In the previous video I mentioned that Saturn is also about hard work that you have to put in and karma that comes from that, meaning the results, or if you perceive it as consequences, meaning fear rather than faith, which is the results. It's kind of like that. With it in the placement of Scorpio, it's more about the consequences. It's almost like she had to go through these consequential things that it's like, it's very disciplined actually. Look at that, Saturn conjunct Mars, absolutely, especially in Scorpio, absolutely, right? So it's like that whole that assertiveness that comes through. It's really like transformative. It's inner. It's there's a sort of like a like I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like that whole like you have to go through things very slowly, and you process it. It's very internalized. A lot of emotional processing, but it's internalized. A lot of like deep-seated, probably resentment is probably there too. Probably like jealousy as well, because you have the Mars here in the 5th house. When you're young with any sort of Scorpio placement, if it's an unconscious processing, it's definitely like highly sexual, taboo stuff, like all those kind of things. But with Saturn here, it wasn't that processing. It's more like internal. She probably had to go through like a lot of questioning of like what she needed to kind of fulfill her basic needs, which is her moon. And at the same time, going back to Ceres, it's almost like what she needs to funny how I didn't click that. You see that? I don't know what happened there. I love how technology just does that. Okay. So anyways, what do you call this? So that's stuck there. Yeah. Technology is being weird, and not just technology, but I think it's the... Anyways, I don't want to get into that. Okay, let's go back to that one. So again, I got distracted there. I allowed myself to get distracted. So yeah, so that's it. So basically a lot of issues with sexuality, sensuality. Well, I wouldn't say probably sensuality, because it's in the 5th house. It's almost like she probably didn't really generally know how to enjoy her childhood. Very serious childhood with Saturn there as well. A lot of changes as well, with any unexpected changes. Also retrograde. So it's more like, see, I didn't click on that. I don't know what happened there. Love that. I don't know what happened there. Okay. So, something else open right now. I don't know what that is. Okay. Let's keep moving. So, with Uranus in retrograde, it's like it's a retrograde. These kind of retrogrades, I'm still trying to understand them, but I know that it's sort of like, it's awkward, it's repeating itself. It's sort of a feeling of like you have no control over it because it's just stuck. There's a feeling of like unexpected things. It's just like, it's just, but it doesn't necessarily have to feel negative. It means that we kind of internalize it. It's processing of that energy. When we process like retrograde Saturn, at the very least, it's like we can understand what real discipline is in terms of real karma. Like we're kind of more aware of like, how do I become more patient? Like what is becoming patient when I just allow for it to happen naturally? It's almost like retrograde is like not escaping the slow natural process of nature, because it's forcing you to see within. It's forcing you to go look within, look within, look within. Where is that? Where is your, literally like your inner Mars, inner Saturn, inner Uranus in this case. Okay, so there's something about that. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so she does have it also opposite Orcus. So she embodies Orcus naturally, because it's in her 4th house. So it kind of, but it kind of made her probably, she had to kind of realize what integrity, how to balance integrity and being true to her physical self, like being true to her abilities. And Orcus here is in Leo. So that means that it is really weird today. Okay, where is Uranus happening today? Where is Uranus? Your Uranus is kind of, okay, expansion, okay, it's going to, where is Uranus? Sorry, I'm going to look at the transit. There's something going on today. Okay, it's, no, that's not it. It's, I would say it's square moon right now. So people probably experiencing these sudden changes. So this is right there. Emotions are going to be at a weird, sort of like unexpected way of energy. It's like very, yeah, okay, this expanded. But it's also going to affect homes. It's most likely. So I don't know. So So okay, so Orcus is opposite her moon. Okay, so she had to balance like her basic needs with her what in real integrity is, like what your soul contract, basically what your soul, what you promised yourself when you came into this life, like that deep subconscious beliefs we have, like what is that? It's part of shadow work, which is like Orcus is that part of us that just really, it's kind of like Ixion. I don't know how to describe that, but it's like Orcus is that energy of this is what I intended to do in the first place. It's almost like the actual intention of your deepest self. It's kind of popping up, and once in a while it's, I would say Orcus is like the intention of the shadow, which is like, this is what I really would need and want at the same time. And so balancing that with the moon, it's almost like basic needs. When you have basic needs, it's usually just kind of a little more unconscious, especially when you're younger. It's because it's like you just want to like sustain yourself. You want to just feel. You want to just experience. You want to be wild, right? It's similar to the energies of Diana and Artemis, the art asteroids, because it's like wild, free. They just want to be, you just want to be like natural. You just want to be like, there's an animalistic side to it as well, right? So it's it's rooted in a lot of emotions. So she had to balance her emotions and what her body was saying versus like herself, her own independence with what people wanted or what relationship she was in, any form of relationships, any sort of that. Again, it kind of ties in with Orcus's about also contracts, and the seventh house is also contract. So the agreement she decided for herself subconsciously, and instinctive subconscious, and also intuitive possibly, and level, because we have Leo here, it's intuition. So Orcus there, she had to be honest with herself and what she wanted, and to kind of balance that. That's just the gist of it. I don't know how to get deep into it unless I go deep into myself, because I'm not really channeling her like right now. So I don't know. And when I say channeling, I mean like, I mean that in a way that it's like, it's a kind of like, I know that I would get there, but right now I'm just not getting it. So Orcus is also squaring Sedna. It's actually at a T square right now. Sedna. Oh no, there's a T square. No, there's no T square. Nope. Because you have Orcus right here. It's squaring Sedna Ceres. So kind of coming to terms with the reputational nurturing she got, but at the same time, Sedna brings back the belief about it, and the natural, like natural and actual, like I wouldn't call it absolute, but yeah, like real release of the fact that it's like, the public is doesn't doesn't she didn't know how to work with the public, because the public didn't know how to work with her, and that's okay, because it's like, when I say work with, I mean, because she apparently she grew up like, she was quite different than most people, like because she grew up not being completely immersed in the conditioning of other humans. It's almost like she retained these other abilities. That's why she's Claire. That's why she has all these abilities, like the Claires. She can see things. She can see auras. So there's a lot of that there. Haumea, her third house, which is her the skills. Probably one of the skills she took for granted was the ability to really find her own like her own fertile self. Like, I don't know how to describe that. I'm at a lack of I'm lack for words. I don't know. Okay, I don't really speak English. That's all. Okay, so but with Haumea is it's our like mother self inside, with it opposite Pallas Athena. Now, why did I go into the third house? Because the third house is our skill sets. It's what we're learning every day. It's the kind of stuff that we like, okay. But how to work with those sometimes become, because we're too conscious on the like surrounding immediate environment. Sometimes we forget that, sometimes we bury things, or rather it's like we forget certain things. So skills that we have learned from the past, one of those is definitely the ability to regenerate a lot, to heal and process and become connected with your own inner mother nature. Opposite of Pallas Athena, so it's like there's kind of like maybe oppositional forces, or in this case, when I talk about the previous video about what's that word I'm looking for? Resistance, right? Because in her, when public, any sort of philosophy she's developed, any sort of education, higher education she went through growing up, it was very much like highly intuitive. It's like it's right there in Pisces. Very, it's just up there. Okay. Again, I'm just kind of like running through her chart because there's a lot of other things I wanted to talk about. I wanted to see what else is in there. It's like a bag of goodies. So going back to her ascendant, I don't know if people notice this, but she very much embodies the Juno Vesta appearance. You know, it's like that her hair, she always likes to let it down. There's a Juno in her about being committed. But it's an internal thing that I don't think people see that. It's very in the background. What people often might see, or what she kind of reflects on the people, is definitely that Vesta appearance, which is not only is it like she's like unreadable, she's also like you can see the sacredness and devotion that she puts in when she talks, when she and because it's emotions, the emotions come through, but it's a very sort of inner fire that you see, right? And the way she talked about in her video about Kundalini, she actually embodies that. But in a very like kind of way, it's not very too emotional. There's a lot of logic to it, and you can tell the way she speaks. There's a lot of intellect coming through because of her moon in Aquarius. So Aquarius, so Uranus rules all her, what is that here? 19 degrees. It rules her Vesta and Juno. Okay. The Sun and the Venus thing is all the way up in Gemini here. So that's not what it is. Yeah, so that's what it is. I found that it's very interesting the way she appears. But how people tend to perceive her is a little different. She's probably perceived as, until today, quite, there's a sort of assertiveness to her, like kind of like it's very pioneering. It's very Aries, okay? Midheaven Aries, okay? And so, yeah. Which is funny because like you look at the whole thing about nurture and her motherhood and single being mother, kind of like the whole thing is all ties in with her 10th house stuff here. Her Eris and Aries, most of us we have similar degrees, 16 degrees. I think mine's is also 16 degrees. No. I don't remember. So Eris is embodied in It's part of her, the building of her reputation, how she seen by the public. Again, it's reputation, it's ego, with being very like sure about that. It's that energy. If you can sense what I mean by you're sure about that, that's Eris. Eris is like the temptress. She's like the one that goes, seriously? Okay. Okay, there you go. You sure? Mm-hmm. That's Eris. I don't know if that makes sense. But it's like, she's the one that mocks absurdity. But there's a truth behind that, because the darkness of Eris is to create strife and disharmony and chaos in a sort of more like verbal, sort of like, can be physical, not really, depending on the sign. But in this case, Aries, yeah, it's a little bit that too. It is a generational thing, but on a personal level, I think Aries for me feels like it just wants to rock the fucking boat. Usually through things that are more like verbal. Even though it is in Aries, there's a fieriness to it, but there's that sort of like, you want war? I'll give you fucking war. Okay, destroy yourselves. Go ahead. I'm gonna laugh here on the sides, and I'm going to see what absurdities come out of this whole thing, because you made a decision, right? So that's what's gonna come out. So part of that, and also making like these, like you can see, dire decisions with Pholus, right? That's part of her 10th house journey. With her sun being in the 12th house, even though it's in Gemini, it's very flexible. So you can see that many people might not see her as Gemini, let alone with her Venus there. Venus is conjunct her sun. She's there's this very seductive approach. She's very like, there's an alluring sort of thing. You can also see it in her hair. It's not just the Vesta thing. It's sort of Venus in there. Like there's a Venus thing, I can sense it. And she's very much like very flexible and kind of like, there's that airiness about it. But at the same time, because I'm not talking about the airy appearance, it's more about, because her sun and Venus are in the 12th house, it's very hidden. She has Piscean qualities as well. So she's very much in depth. Most of her life, she's had a lot of time to reflect. Lots of it. And most likely, that's the case. With her, what is that? Okay, so her sun and her Venus opposite Neptune. Okay, so she's probably growing up, had to process the illusions and delusions of what is, like what everyday life should be, right? Neptune in the 6th house, so a lot of it is like to do with health, and it often like quite expanded, and she kind of had to figure out what that meant for her. Like reality itself was it became more apparent when she was younger, especially because I think maybe before she had any relationship, before she became an adult, she already had this like strong intuitive feeling that it's like, this isn't what it is. I feel like this intuition, that intuitively, highly intuitively speaking, it's like, Neptune also rules 12th house, so any sort of health issues that might come about appears in her 12th house, so she had to process all that internally, or at least maybe had to, any forms of, not necessarily isolation, but possibly to heal, both spiritually and physically, emotionally, mentally as well. With it in the 0 degrees in Capricorn, it's like she's probably experienced a lot of these reality sort of things, especially with Capricorn there. It kind of enhances that whole like, let's ground you a little bit more in terms of what you see as reality. Like how do you perceive, or how do you relate with, because we're talking about Venus here, how do you relate with society? How do you relate with the greater systems? And how that works in her. Because it's the 6th house, Neptune rules the nervous system. In Capricorn, it's her skin. So it's very sensitive. I would say highly sensitive, sensory. This explains the sensory thing, why she's able to see things, and it's very sensitive. So skin and bones, okay, and her knees as well. I'm not sure if she had experiences with her knees. Also possibly with liver, so any sort of thing, because I think Jupiter rules the liver, I believe. I'm not into medical astrology, so I believe that's something to do with that. But something tied around that area. I don't know what that is. It's the, maybe she had issues with, because her vitality was quite hidden. It's like in the 12th house, so that overall feeling she had through her heart, the chest area right here and probably the back, kind of affected like maybe how she would stand, maybe through her knees, like her bone structure, maybe those kind of things, possibly. There's something else about Capricorn here. I don't know what it is. It's something else. There's something to do with the bone, the skin, like anything to do with structure and, you know, maybe the backbone, spine. I'm not sure. For those medical astrologers, go ahead, read this. I don't know what it is. She also has, so, okay, cool. So, what else? Because her sun is in Gemini, and it's right there. It's right there, literally, like conjunct her Mercury as well. So she knows how to communicate, but she's had a lot of time growing up to reflect on these. Very highly intuitive processing. Even though it's in Gemini, it's more logical, but logic meets, it's like right, it's like she has left brain, right brain sort of things. Yeah. What else? Oh, there's something about the sun as well. So for men, I would say men in general. Right eye is the sun, left eye is female. So her left eye, because it's left eye and it's connected to the right brain, that's her. Okay, that explains the intuitiveness. Okay, that explains. Okay, because this is the sun for women, and this is the moon for women. So a lot of that's why she's very intuitive and also in touch with her emotions. It's like there's that thing with it both being in air, actually, right? It's interesting, but it's not trine. So yeah, interesting. I don't often read these black dotted lines. I believe that's what is that? There's a certain aspect that I don't know what that is. I've yet to really go into that, and I don't know what that is. But anyways, let's take a look. So all three, this one here, the stellium, square Pallas Athena. So growing up with her, how she would develop her own philosophy, probably when she went through to university, or any sort of belief systems that she was in, any sort of teachers probably she had, any visions she experienced, like forward-looking visions, not just necessarily visions, but the kind of dreams she had, like for her future, kind of had she experienced a lot of challenges with how she was going to express herself. Because Varuna is not retrograde here, she was able to accomplish that and work through that. And a lot of, again, isolation, possibly, or rather like reflective moments. She might have probably also got into, what do you call that? Recreational drugs. I wouldn't. That's not really out of the picture, but I'm just saying that. But the thing is, we have here Neptune. I'm sorry, Neptune. Yeah, in retrograde. So I feel like she might have been questioning it. She might have been tempted to go into that kind of stuff, but she didn't necessarily escape through that because it's very realistic as well. She probably escaped through other things like career. She escaped through like just working through things. Maybe work was a kind of escape for her as well, most likely. Any sort of work, it became sort of this idealistic sort of environment to escape to. If she couldn't escape spiritually, she kind of maybe had that experience of using work as an escape, places of reflections, but just doing. Right? It's in Earth as well, because it's in Earth right here, Capricorn. Her Ixion core, we don't have much on that. Because they were they were in perfect conjunction, almost perfect conjunction by 2 minutes. But it's in retrograde in core, so she didn't, because in retrograde she kind of had to often question and kind of felt like she didn't know how to work with the rhythms of life itself. She had to really go through that, but she had a trine Pallas Athena, so that means that she did it in different ways. So it wasn't through necessarily like the child stuff, childlike playing and all that stuff. It wasn't anything recreational or even like romantic experiences. She was able to probably most likely feel it naturally through developing a higher sense of philosophy, a higher sense of belief and things. Everything that's very, very highly spiritual. At the same time, that's how she was very devoted to that. You can see right here, right? It's actually conjuncture, is that? Okay, it's square her, um, it's square Juno and also ascendant, not Vesta, but she was very, she naturally had this ability to just be committed to it. She basically married herself to those philosophies, right? And so that's how she found it. It was an internalized sort of like joy and rhythm of life, those kind of things. Physically speaking, materially speaking, I'm not sure if she ever went into some sort of her any sort of drumming. Maybe she dabbled in that. I'm not really sure. Some sort of spiritual drumming, spiritual kind of sense of like creating rhythms. That's very much like core. And Ixion is, but Ixion is like very, like true, like it's bliss, right? But it's Ixion represents the part in us that is very interested. It's not even interested. It's passionate about what it truly wants in order to just to feel, I would say, carnally free. Okay, especially in Scorpio, it's like, so looking into the darkness and finding joy in that. It's a weird type of joy. It's not like the sun kind of joy. It's not like the moon kind of joy. It's not like any sort of childlike stuff, but it can be. But it's like really going deep into it. Definitely like very committed to her like research and figuring out what that meant for her. So that's Ixion also rules research. What else? In terms of transits, her Haumea is transiting conjunct her own Pluto, so it's probably bringing in concerns about maybe karmic past life stuff internally about family issues. Not just because it's transiting her fourth house, but because it's also retrograde. And Haumea is about not family, but like how we relate to the grander scheme of things, like our own inner nature with Mother Nature herself, and how we relate to that. It's finding our own sort of sense of fertile abilities. I don't know how to describe that, but Makemake is transiting her fourth house, so probably thoughts are probably coming through that are just like downloads that are kind of like internal. Like, what's this? I don't know what that is. Like it's just intuitive. It's highly intuitive, but at the same time like ideas, like just like, so I don't know if that is because it's in 10 degrees. Oh, well, it's quincunx Mars right now. You can see right here. It's quincunx Mars in Pisces. So for her, I believe that maybe means that probably a lot of like assertive energy when explaining, and just like these downloads just coming through very like it's just, and it's very kind of focused because Mars is also conjunct Saturn, so it's very much grounded. It's very focused. It's kind of a thing. Okay. Oh wait, nope. That's 10 degrees. Let's see. Oh, it's square her own natal Jupiter. So, okay. maybe ideas that are coming, like downloads she's getting in terms of like her health. But Pholus and Core, Core and Ixion. Okay, Pholus and Core are in 10 degrees right now, so conjuncting her natal Jupiter, it's like sort of like an internal expansiveness, like internal sort of joy. She's probably having an like call these. He's probably having to make decisions that go in, that tie in with the natural rhythms of nature, and like just like it's life itself kind of. I don't know. She's probably feeling like this. Um, there's something going on there. So I feel like something to do, not necessarily with liver, maybe something to do with expansion. This is a medical stuff, so I don't know how to describe. I don't know how to analyze this one yet. Okay, so this is the whole part of the astrological journey. You get to learn as you go, and it's the fun part. You don't always have to know everything. Oh, let's sextile her natal Uranus in retrograde. So, okay. So when people probably talk to her, she's had this, but maybe first it's internalized and at the same time then expressed in a very sort of like unique way, especially like how she relates, because it's in Libra, the people. So there's a lot of like maybe like her, I don't know, these unexpected like new relationships that probably come through are probably getting her to like, I don't know, it's probably just adding to it. I don't know if this is doing anything, but definitely something to do with well, Pallas Athena is conjunct her natal Uranus. It's also retrograde. A lot of retrogrades. So a lot of internalizing, a lot of finding wisdom in new encounters or sudden changes in relationships. Not necessarily sudden change in relationships, like revolutionary relationships possibly, but it's more perceived internally. It's more like, okay. What else? That's just how I'm analyzing it, because I'm still, as you go through all this stuff, one of the things I'm learning is retrograde is one of those tricky ones, because even though it is internalized, like, what does it mean? I tend to overthink things, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, bad thing. So, with Make, I know that just she's getting all these stuff about. I get probably memories or things about her past life, things about ancestry, things about family stuff. Any person she's probably meeting, probably coming back to her life. I don't know. Orcus is going to be conjunct her Haumea. Not right now. I would say probably on the way. So our own inner Haumea in terms of like how she regenerates through knowledge, through learning, and also owning back her any sort of taken for granted skills. Orcus is going to eventually make her feel like, okay, it's as she gets older, Orcus is going to be conjuncting that for sure, and it's going to really go deep into herself. Varuna is transiting her Orcus, is already past it, so whatever the term was, I forgot what the term is. Maybe wondering if she's been honest with herself, possibly, because it's Varuna in retrograde, and Varuna is like also about apparently Philip Sedgwick says like the completion of tasks. Varuna is the creation of, it's not limits, it's like saying that this is what we need to be disciplined about, or rather it's not really disciplined, like I'm still trying to understand the Varuna as well. So there's a lot of these other new dwarf planets that require more understanding, and I've yet to process it, because I've been working more on asteroids. Those are the ones that I understand a lot more. So the sun, right, this is a big one right here. So it's the sun. We have the sun conjunct. Okay, sun is conjuncting the north node. Chiron is here. So with this one, only this one right here, we have the sun conjuncting north node with Chiron. And it's like societal, the evolution of society to work with wounding with governments and all that stuff. It's kind of like conjuncting her own Eris, which is, she's probably being, maybe she'll feel like this is what society is going through and how she's actually making changes towards that, because it's still in Aries. So that means it's like, but she's, because she has this pioneering self to kind of, it's like a pushing of changes in society, as society is going through all this like deep collective wounding and karmic things, just call it things. Eris is actually, for her, it's almost like her Eris is coming in, like, it's almost like she's making people, she's really making people process things and think. And like, not just think, but like, what are you doing about it? What is this? What is this? What is that? Right? So it's very Eris, is again, like I said earlier. Eris itself, the collective Eris, it's, what is that? Mercury in retrograde. Yes, Mercury in retrograde right now. This is why technology is being funny. So, and plans, don't make any new plans. Don't plan anything new. Even though it is going to head towards a new moon. It's really weird. It's like, it's a new moon, it's opportunities, but it's like internal opportunities, not planned opportunities. But Eris is conjuncting Mercury, so we're being tested. We're feeling like it's like, we're going to have to see, it's like, is just how we react to this sort of like stopping of communication, stopping of transmission, stopping of technology, stopping of, it's Eris is going like, what are you going to do about it? Right? This is part of the collective journey, the part of collective choices that have led to where it is today. And so it's conjuncting her fullest, so she would have to make certain specific decisions regarding all that. But she would know how to do that because it's in conjunct, so it means like, but some of it might be a little drastic, some of it might come out like, maybe there's maybe a tendency for her to repeat certain decisions. They're kind of like, but definitely more expressive about what choices she's probably making, and kind of making people kind of question that, and also probably also bring out the shadow in others as well. Eris also triggers shadow in others, pretty much like any of the Plutonian planets. They do trigger shadow in many people. The Uranus Neptune conjunction is transiting her 11th house, so that means any sort of community she's in, her own community. A lot of changes probably going on. They're expanding for sure. That's a general one. That's a nice one. But said also there, said as bringing back in how to be more. The cycles are renewing itself, and being able to let go of the past and really like and complete. It's almost like a clean slate. Sedna kind of represents a bit of like a clean slate. Necessarily clean slate, but like really absolute like relinquishing of things, because it's back into Taurus right now, or is it in Gemini? Okay, 29 degrees Taurus, so it's really right there. So a lot of these changes that should be happening with farming and all those things, on a personal level, it's more about self-worth, because it's Taurus, beauty, pleasure, things like that. And because it's trine, we have this trine with Pluto, right? it's again, that intensity is coming through. It's a real process. It's a natural process. Not only collectively speaking, but also individually. So for her, it's the same thing. 29 degrees, so it means her community and relationship with her community is experiencing most likely sort of these changes that you'll feel kind of more like, it's kind of like a renewal. It's kind of like a breaking free. It's like Pluto is there going like, oh, so this is what it means to feel. This is how I should feel. What should I feel? At the very least, on a very, the 3D perspective, right? So, and a lot of transformation is going on. So it's a new cycle of transformation. And the Vesta here that's transiting in 1 degree, 1.5 degrees, whatever, into Cancer is, what is that? It's just transiting her 12th house. So probably in her dreams, or she's probably going through more realization of like, be with life, be with life, be with life. Continue to find that inner fire. Because it's in 1 degrees, it is actually opposite her natal Neptune. So that means, again, they're like, this is reality. So again, she's getting all these things. So it's a lot of things that are coming through her that it's like, okay, what she's doing is correct. The path she's probably taking is correct. So I don't know. I want to go into some of the I'm not going to go into the transits with the asteroids. If I do, then maybe it's significant. Oh, she's had to go through a transformation of health internally, like intellectual health, possibly as well, like her own hygiene. This is a medical stuff, but she's all about health and wellness. A lot of transformative stuff, but internally. So I don't know what that is. It's something to do with like maybe mental health, because it's in Aquarius, opposite Minerva, and kind of just being more finding logic in that. With Minerva in her 2nd house, it's sort of like she had to what's that? How to work with that intellectuality that she's probably going through. I don't know what Cleopatra does here, because that's still new for me. I don't really have a lot on Cleopatra. I've yet to go to that. But something to do with Minerva. Again, Minerva's also new for me. But something to do with like self-worth and how she had to go through that as a child in terms of her intellect. Like he's just very, very unique, right? So people probably found her. So that, okay, the IG thing probably explains her mental health. It probably, her own self-worth probably felt like, people think I'm strange, but and she had probably a lot of issues with harmony, like reaching that whole idea that it's like balance with her any community she was in. Could be groups, it could be clubs, it could be school itself as well. Money she earned, any sort of like things, benefits she earned from her workplace, her boss, anyone she worked for before. Those kind of things. What else? Okay, so this one's about health. So I'm going to skip this chart because I don't know what I can see about this one. That's all I can say. Hebe is another one. I'm not going to go into that because there's something... I don't know what Hebe is. I mean, not in detail. Okay, so we saw that Haumea was in 20 degrees. Okay. Haumea was in 20 degrees, so it's conjunct her Thetis. So, that Thetis? Not Themis. Thetis is the What was that about? You know what? I'm not going to force it. Yeah. What is this one? Oh. Charclo Heracles. Commitment to healing through that. Like that willpower that she probably naturally had to go through. She had to kind of trust her things, a lot of lessons, life lessons, with particularly like community she was in. But she naturally healed through that. She would get guidance a lot. Charclo is like healing. It's angelic sort of healing. That's a general thing I can say about that one. And naturally being able to heal through emotions with relationships. It's trying her moon. Okay, but her moon was scared. Okay, what else? We already did that. That's something about Thetis. This one's gonna bother me a little bit. I'm gonna look up Thetis. I just want to get the general name. Over nurturing. Okay, so probably she probably over analyzed her ability to nurture herself, or like through knowledge. Probably like a lot of reading, a lot of research, a lot of just probably a little excessive, probably because she wanted to feel like her basic needs were being met when she was a child, or probably not necessarily herself, like probably a mother that probably talked to her too much, okay, or probably gave her too much of health stuff, like it's like you have to take care of this, you have to do this. So over nurturing through Virgo is like wash your hands all the time, do this and all the time, and make sure you do the right thing all the time, make sure you're right on time, everything that is very like, but it's nurturing through the perfectionism. Being like pedantic and anal and all those other things that are very like gotta be pure, right? So with it also trying Niobe, Astrea. Astrea, I believe, is Astrea is like peace. There's a lot of peace that probably going through in the household, even though again it was kind of cold. People probably in her family, what she was growing up with was probably also like the family had a lot of pride with what like being clean, being like so at peace. We're like very perfect. We're like we got it. I'm not saying that they had pride, but it was possible. Or rather, internalized pride. Okay, it's retrograde. Astrea is also retrograde. Okay. So, but internalized, but because it's like, is it probably something they were proud of? They probably had to. I think she told it in the interview that her family, she grew up in a family where they were away from society, right? So that means that I think she hardly came across anyone. So there's that whole like distancing thing with Capricorn, right? It's like the hermit, right? So her family that she grew up in is probably most likely in that environment, relating with not anyone. So there's always a questioning of like, what do we have to be? We're so like in a quiet environment. I don't know if it's something that we should be proud of. So there's always a questioning about that. There's also a questioning also of peace and like this absolute like just sort of like it's harmony as well. Astrea is harmony, and how that could also look to others, and maybe she was kind of like, how did people feel that way? Cerberus was also conjunct her okay, so that makes sense. Cerberus is conjunct her ascendant, and also what was that, Juno? So that means she probably had this sort of like commitment to make this feeling as if maybe she owed society something, or rather that it was whatever society had to go through, she was kind of portraying that she wanted to show that it's like, oh, I care for you. It's almost like a feeling of responsibility to society, which is funny because it's actually was it yeah, so there's that push towards that. Her Cerberus Juno is square Eris, so this like tendency to kind of feel like I need to do this for society. You're my responsibility. Your problems are kind of my problems, or maybe are my problems, or something like that. Because it's in Cancer, it's almost like this. There's that feeling of like I must nurture society. I want you to see that. I want you to feel that. I want you to know that I care. But there's that Eris push as well, because it's like Eris is like, maybe she's experienced a lot of uh, the push towards society, as if it's like, are you sure that's what you want, and vice versa as well, right? So it goes both ways, right? And with Eos there, it's almost like not retrograde. Okay, so Eos there is um, always kind of like resetting itself. It's almost like there's always some sort of renewal process, but again, because it's square, it's almost like, how do you start anew? How do you process all this stuff? You also have like Antigone here, so her Antigone is moral values, or like moral code, sorry, something to do with that. So like being like, this is it, and my way or the highway kind of thing. With it conjunct her. I believe it's conjunct. You can say, not really, no, it's not conjunct her Juno, but it is square Eos, and I believe also square. It's 12 degrees. Not really. Square Eos, but not Eris. So that means that Antigone here, like her reflection, like any sort of like, she must have these self-reflective moments. She must have a lot of times to regenerate. She has to have that, because it's like a reflection in terms of like, escapism is kind of a natural thing. It's like, I have to do these things. I would say she probably meditates a lot. And that's how she renews. But the thing is, maybe with societal pressures, probably, at least growing up, it feels like, how do I start anew? How do I start anew? There's also something to do with relationship with old people, or vice versa. She probably has like that. She probably seen as like the daddy syndrome, like the mother syndrome, like the parent. It's something to do with old and young, and she probably gets a lot of young people drawn to her. I'm not really sure. Eos is something to do with cycles and renewals, so it also means like the past and the old. It's something to do with that. So this one is interesting, but again, so the responsibility to society. Yay, Cerberus. What else do we have here? So she has Echo also, like Taurus. Toro, I don't know how to work with that, but Toro is something to do with like your own. Maybe she was bullied as a young child when she was young. Either to schools, her cousins, any sort of, maybe her siblings, bullied in a certain way. Especially, no, bullied, but okay, maybe she had to go through wounding through being bullied by club, like through any sort of community she was in, not necessarily schools, but it could be, and then and how she had to learn through that, because she would kind of like probably had to just do what people were doing, Echo, and she kind of probably felt kind of left out. With Echo there, it's like she's kind of forgotten, right? That's anything forgotten, sort of like a past distant memory. But at the same time, though, she was able to internally process that, and kind of had to go through her own, like, Jupiter, like her own, because you see the trine here, there's trine to Jupiter, right? With that trine to Jupiter, Jupiter is telling her to find internal, like, first of all, she probably doubted her own, and that affected her health and how she would process things. With Jupiter there, it's almost like optimism had to be found from within. Right? The sense of joy, the sense of luck, the sense of ease, the sense of relaxation, the sense of like, I can just be myself. She had to really work through that, especially through the Capricorn placement. Okay. So with Echo there, it's almost like she had to go do what other people do, because otherwise they would like tease her, they would ostracize her, kind of thing. And that's part of her journey. So she actually, her north node is in Chiron, it's conjunct Chiron. So it's very much, that's her journey. That's where she's going through. That's why she does what she does. And she has all these, let's see what else is there. Is there another? Okay. So her north node is conjunct Chiron, so she had to process that. But there's also Phaethon as well. So Phaethon is recklessness, but this is a kind of recklessness that is not like Icarus. I've had videos before where I talked about Icarus, which is like risk-taking. Phaethon is risk-taking because there's a sort of like a resentment sort of feel to it. I feel like Phaethon is like, oh no, is it Phaethon? Maybe that is Icarus. Let's go back here. Oh yeah, that is the one. So it feels like maybe sort of escapist, sort of like maybe, I don't know if it's family shame, something to do with that, guilt, emotional manipulation, having kind of a distance from parent, lack or excess of energy, teen rebellion. Okay, so possibly also depression might have been part of it as well. So she had to probably go through that. And she had to really work through that because you have Sisyphus right here. Sisyphus was in her third, really learning from that, but continuously. But it felt like maybe she didn't accomplish a lot. She probably perceived it as like, this isn't working, but she still does it anyways, right? The fact that she's her north node right now is helping people working through their wounding is an ongoing thing. That's Sisyphus. Sisyphus feels like our inner Sisyphus feels like it's fruitless, whatever work we do. And her third house is like fruitless learning, fruitless engagement with communication and talking things through, learning things, experiencing things, and but it's one of those things she has to also realize that it's like as she works through this stuff, eventually it's going to bear fruit, in the most natural way. Not in probably the 3D way, but in the actual reality of things. It will bear fruit, maybe not necessarily visible, maybe even after she passes away, or this form that she's in passes away. Right, so that's kind of, it's, yeah. She has Pandora, Narcissus, okay. She probably experiences a lot of narcissism through her second house, and that's kind of, and she probably was seen that way, or she probably had that in her environment, and a lot of chaos with her like self-worth with her 11th house right here. Ate is a daughter of Earth, so Ate is all about chaos, but she's like purely like just chaos, like she's like havoc. She's just like, is your rebellious havocness. It's just like, fuck it all. But the thing about Ate is that she can be like the supplement to Eris, where it's like, we need to have real chaos in order for there to be an understanding why we have to have chaos in the first place. I don't know if that makes sense. Because I get it, because it's like, Ate is like, it's a chaos that happens when there's just too much of the order. There's just too much control. Then things have to be shaken up. It's like Uranus on acid, or Uranus and Eris on acid. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay. Hybris in her 12th house. Of course, that's like pride, but it's also pride in oneself and accomplishments. Icarus in her 8th house, so a lot of transformation through like the risks you had to take to kind of see, like, because Icarus is that belief in oneself, right? In retrograde, it's really internalized. What else? Oh, Lucifer, opposite her own natal Mars. Well, it's opposite. Oh, Hybris Narcissus is transiting her Saturn, or no, Mars only. So any sort of recreational things, children, a lot of issues with, I don't know what that is. Children? I'm not really sure. Coming across, I don't know what that is. I can't figure out what that is. Okay, so Lucifer opposite her Mars. Is it also Saturn? Yeah, it is also Saturn. It's conjunct her 11th house. So that's the thing. People probably perceived her as like this evil person, like this evil, chaotic sort of like not chaotic, evil, like sort of like dark person. Like she's very real, right? And so she's had to deal with that and kind of like just really embrace her dark side and say, okay, well that's what you feel, that's what it is, but I can't do anything about that. But I'm going to continue on with it. I'm going to, and working with that sort of like embracing. Yeah, it's really just embracing your dark side. With the Saturn Mars conjunct there, it's almost like, okay, keep going. And she's just stuck her ground, and just like, she's learned how to do that and balance that and use that in a way to. That's why she often appears like, if you ever notice that, she appears like she has that Capricorn humor, the earthy humor as well, earthy humor. It's like irony that comes through her humor, it's like like that kind of stuff, right? she does that. It's hilarious. I don't know how to just call it. It's like satirical. She has satirical humor, all that kind of stuff. So Acha is conjunct transiting her sixth house. I don't know what to talk about with that one. I don't know what to say. I hope she's okay. Like, transiting stuff with the sixth house. That's crazy. Okay. I don't know what that is. I don't know Atta rules yet. I don't know what part of the body. That's medical stuff. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Let's go with this right here. Okay, she's had Nemesis in her 4th house. So I'm gonna skip that one. Okay. So growing up, she's had to. Okay, you see this Artemis right here. It's opposite her Delphine. So visions that she would naturally have, and gifts she would have for being able to see and understand, having her philosophy, and kind of just taking her own time and having it's ninth house is very Sagittarius, kind of like I'm doing my own thing, let me do my own thing. But with opposite of Artemis, it's almost like instead of being up here, she's almost like basic down here. So maybe she had to feel like she had to protect her knowledge as well. She had to protect and be kind of being in touch with her inner nature, but at the same time, she has a lot of oppositions in her chart because it means that she had to balance a lot of things. It's part of shadow work as well. Her north node, Chiron, opposite her Horus, Prometheus. Okay, that's a beautiful one because Horus, Prometheus. Through children, possibly. Through the understanding of like your own inner child, how to process that, her own inner warrior, foresight. When I say inner warrior, just also Horus, but it's like a really like this one shows her clairs right here, like the ability she has and foresight that she has. She's able to see things that others aren't, especially internally. And it's in her 5th house, so I would say she enjoys that. And it's part of what gives her joy. When I say enjoy, I mean like it does give her joy. It gives her a sense of like purpose so that she can help others. Her south node so her north node is in 6 degrees, so that means her south node is in 6 degrees, Sagittarius. Around here. Okay, that's this point right here. Yeah. So she's it's actually Uranus. Okay, so it's like okay. Retrograde. Love all these retrogrades. Or south node tended to be more about what can I call this? It's almost like she had these like internal changes to learning about her past life and like what that meant for her, or rather things that she feels at home with these abilities. Right? She feels like this is her like just natural, but it's not expressed internally. But she's kind of like she processes it. She has foresight. She has clairs. She's all these abilities, but she's not able to really express it because growing up she's probably had a lot of like doubts about it, especially with like any maybe any relationships she's had, any romantic relationships, any sort of where she had to be creative. But because she feels that because it's her south node, it's conjunct her south node, it's like that's okay. I'm okay with that. It's normal. It's natural. It feels actually like it's almost like a retrograde is her thing. It's almost like a lot of processing, a lot of internalization, a lot of doubts. Right? So she had to go through that. And kind of that doubting or that feeling of awkwardness, it wasn't actually awkward for her. It just probably appeared awkward to others. Even if she had awkwardness, she was able to process it. And then with it opposite her north node, naturally she had to embrace the fact that she can work through that. She's embraced her awkwardness and she just like she just shows it now, and it's like that's okay. And when you see her talk, it's like I can see it's like okay, that's interesting. So she's here to educate people. She's here to be a teacher of wounding, teaching us how to be work with our wounded selves. Her talent is right here in her sun. It's right there, so she's able to get the right information. She's very inquisitive growing up, but because she's had a lot of time to process that herself, like through self-reflection, most likely I would say through like guidance rather than actual studies. That's where her general talent lies. 17, 18. Okay, so her talent talent also conjunct Sun, Venus. Okay, that's good. So she knows how to relate and communicate with others now that she's had a lot of time to reflect on that. But it's opposite Anubis. So she had a lot of transformational energy, a lot of deaths, specifically in how she would do that every day in everyday life. And at the same time, what that meant in terms of like how like her shadow, the experience she's had in terms of like growing up with the family that she's had. Remember earlier that we also have their what's this one here? Astrea. So again, Astrea is okay. She's had to deal with that whole. This is why when she talks, she's like she has a lot to say. Is because when she's growing up, it's almost like hush, hush, don't talk, or rather, possibly. Okay, I'm not really sure, but yeah. So there's that Anubis like transformation, similar to Osiris, but Anubis is like, it's like Pluto. Let's go back here. Process of loss. Okay, so process of loss in this case for me means like endings. So she's had to go through a lot of transformational process. I think what it is. That's interesting. Osiris is opposite. Is conjunct her. Hold on, 7 degrees. Osiris is hubris. Okay, Osiris is. I would say conjunct hubris. I'm not really sure. Hubris. So that means if it was conjunct, that means that she's has a lot of time to reflect and also work through that pride, where it becomes like this. Instead of pride, it was being proud. It's almost like she was able to work through her accomplishments, also pertaining to family, that she started to embrace her past and say, okay, whatever she's had, although she definitely doesn't. That's why when she says the truth, it's like you can tell it's the truth, right? Because it's like, she's processed that, and she's still processing it, so that's okay. Osiris is conjunct her 7th house. seventh degree, 7 degrees. Oh, opposite are Jupiter. Okay, Osiris opposite of Jupiter. So a lot of rebirthing process and like kind of healing. Like it's almost like a regenerative healing, but breaking apart sort of feel, and then coming back up in terms of her health. I'm not sure it's something to do again with her liver. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not going to go into Jupiter right now because I'm not here for medical stuff. I'm here for the natal. Imhotep. I'm surprising she doesn't. She hasn't. She doesn't really show a lot of astrology stuff, but she can. She can get that more like interesting. Okay, she has Imhotep in her first house. Okay, maybe she should pursue that a little bit more, unless she does already and she doesn't show it. That's totally fine. It doesn't have to be shown all the time. Opposite her moon. Cassandra is right there. Oh, Cassandra is conjunct her moon. So emotions, internal emotions, intense emotions of like, and you know, maybe relationships. Any relationship she has with people, any person, they probably don't believe her. Cassandra's like, but it's almost like she's being told again. She's like, no, believe in what you're doing, believe in what you're going through. That's totally okay. You don't have to prove it to anyone else. So a lot of stuff, shadow stuff coming through in that regard. And with Imhotep there, it's Imhotep is being able to. It's not just about astrology. Imhotep is okay, mysticism. So okay, so that's what she's embodied mysticism and mystery. So her mysterious self, her ability to understand the gifts of the stars and cosmic energies and structures and even math behind it and arithmetics and science and all that stuff. She understands that stuff. Um, uh, but people might not believe her because people are not necessarily ready. Especially with Imhotep and Leo, like, yeah, angelic guidance. And Angel is right there. Is Angel in retrograde? I'm not sure. Let's take a look here. No, Angel is not in retrograde. She also has Angel in her own natal angel in second house, so self-worth, she's able to process that through her going back to her south node. She goes back to her south node, and that's where she gets angelic guidance and like guidance. And like, we already know that stuff. So her self-worth kind of gets processed more when she has self-reflective moments for herself, and that's, she enjoys that stuff. What is this one? Yeah, a lot of it because it's both in fire signs. But it gets challenged with sometimes she'll come across those limits again right here, right? And she has to kind of work through that, and that's totally fine. It's an internal process. She's stronger for it. What is this here? Diana, protecting her reputation. She's this kind of, maybe it's like, psh, stay away from me kind of thing. Like, she knows how to kind of work with that energy. It's in conjunction to her midheaven, and she has to be able to process that. She'd sextile her. She naturally knows how to process that whenever she gets like these critiques and all this stuff from people, because they see her as like aggressive and assertive and probably like too out there. It's like, meh, you're such a daredevil in terms of what you say, how you say it, and it's like, well, fuck that. That's totally fine, right? And it's funny because she naturally has to recycle that. We have to recycle. She has to go through that rebirthing process, dying, living, and she has to internalize it and really like. It's like something that she has to protect herself. Like when she protects. At the same, well, it also could be that people see that she protects her image, and that's how she goes through things, right? So again, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of reflective processing. Which chart am I in? I totally forgot. 5142. Come on. 5210. File name. Sometimes, I never know what files I'm going through. Let's see. Did I already go through that? Okay, I did. Okay, so in this chart right here, oh, she has good memory. Okay, she embodies good memory. She remembers. That's also. I would probably say she probably has that potential to remember, not necessarily past lives, but she's gifted with memory. It's conjunct her ascendant. Arachne. Okay, people get jealous of her abilities, her philosophy, the way she thinks. People think she's like too much. Blah blah blah. Blah blah blah. Cersei, she's able to. She knows who she needs to wean out and kind of like let in, but it kind of how she processes that, she has to kind of internalize that. We had Hecate conjunct Apollo. That's very interesting. But Apollo conjunct her North Node. So she has to be more open to be more living life as it is through the information she gives or what she teaches. But at the same time, know when to back out. Working with that magic of Hecate. It's like working through the natural resources of life and existence, the cosmic energies, working with that magic, like power, inner power, like figuring out your inner strength and power and inner witch. With its square Cersei, it's almost like sometimes she has to create those boundaries and be like, well, you don't believe it, that's totally fine. And she knows how to deal with that. With this square Vulcan, it's almost like something to do with, I don't know what this is. Yeah, I'm gonna skip that one. Sorry about that. Not sorry, because it's just part of the whole process. I want to do it this way, but at the same time, I don't want to do certain asteroids because I'm curious about this one. This is fun. Oh, Coronis. So she has like Coronis conjunct Pluto and conjunct her moon. So that means not only is she going through like disbelief of others, but this is her hidden skills of like being able to process this internally, like a Plutonian sort of energy. Right now, she's having that kind of like a real, like her emotions are okay. Okay, I can work through this. Hidden talents, right? Or things that she didn't know she had, or she probably forgot about it, or it just kind of got put on the side. That's totally fine. Urania Coronis. Okay, so she has probably astrologers in her family, or herself. She has this ability. Urania right here. So that's interesting. So she has the ability to read the stars and get intellectual creativity, knowledge, and all that stuff, and wisdom from those. It is 13 degrees, so that means it's trine both Mercury and Hecate. Mercury and Hecate are conjunctions, so that's why she knows how to bewitch people. She doesn't have to necessarily do that, but she has that power, so she's able to communicate that. What else is there? Yeah, okay. I would go into more in-depth, like meaning like what to focus on, but this is a general reading, so. So she's quite fortunate in the way she communicates, but sometimes there's like, having to reflect on that herself. Like she has had issues and challenges with that kind of fortune. These are general ones. I don't. Themis. Okay, so Themis is a big one in her 10th house. Excuse me. Keeping the peace when she's there, like when she's talking to people. Let's see what she has in. It's conjunct her series. So, with Themis is creating your own little like sacredness with yourself to maintain the peace. She has that oracular sort of ability. with it conjunct Ceres, it's almost like she's able to foretell what nurture, foretell and also see exactly what nurture should be. This is the thing she's talking about. I think this is the one in her videos, she talks about being single mothers, and that's not necessarily have to be that way, because it's not necessarily right. And it's because it's in Taurus, it's always like there's that understanding that it should be at a more basic level, that it's like you can't be a single mother just because you think you can. Doesn't mean that it's necessary, doesn't mean that it's right, doesn't mean that you have to be. That makes total sense now. So Ceres conjunct her Themis is like just sort of this counseling ability she has through the nurturing of Ceres. But because Ceres was actually a single mother too. It's interesting because Ceres was like always losing Persephone to go to Hades and coming back. So it's like a cycle of like, but she's had to learn through that and say, kind of maintain that knowledge that even though that can happen, it doesn't necessarily mean it's okay. She also had this sort of physical understanding of the cycles of self-worth, but also something to do with, because it's epigenetics, something to do with like how your environment changes you, whether you go through that or not, or you choose to accept it or not. In a very, it's all regarding self-worth. So how self-worth affects your own belief systems. Interesting. Orpheus. Orpheus in her 11th house predicts technical abilities. Orpheus is like being able to share how you feel with others. Okay, that makes sense. It's in her 10th house, but it's conjunct her. It's affecting her 11th house, so that means. But the two, they're not even conjunct. Okay, but Orpheus is she's able to make others understand what she's saying, even though at times it doesn't make sense. I believe it is conjunct her Ceres, right? Yeah, it is conjunct her Ceres, conjunct her Sedna. So she's able to bring in this knowledge that people are like, what? Like, what? So going back to this chart right here, right? So but Orpheus is kind of exaggerative sometimes because it's all about lamenting. But in this case, not really like she's lamenting, but there is that sort of feel of like, feel what I'm feeling, understand. And some people will, some people won't. It's totally fine. She has opportunities in her 11th house where she naturally expands through that. She's like, it's an internal expansion. It's an internal belief system, belief in herself. She has opportunity to try and Jupiter. But growing up, again, there is that whole Saturn and Mars thing, right? So, but she realized that maybe she had to change the way what she believed, what was not necessarily what she believed, possibly, but what she was getting in terms of like the benefits of someone she's working for. So I think this is the one that kind of pushed her to be more independent. Okay, especially with the bounty that it's like, with the skills that she's had, this feels like maybe, she realized there's like opportunity. And right here, Amalthea and bounty are both similar in this case, because Amalthea is about true abundance. It's about trusting that what you work on it does bear fruit. And it's funny how Sisyphus was here earlier, right? If you remember, Sisyphus was in her 3rd house. I think it's conjunct fortune. Maybe not. If it is, I don't remember. I don't want to go back to that one. So, but it's something to do with knowledge, which is his 3rd house, which ties in with her North Node. So wonderful, yay! And Themis and Amalthea are conjunct right now. I believe they are going to be conjunct, and it's conjunct, at the very least, it's conjunct her North Node, maybe not Chiron. That right there, a tier, I don't know how to work with that one yet. So, but Themis and Amalthea is like that being able to work through that. It's what do you call this? It's knowing exactly her own path. It's like she's being shown that's like, hey, this is a path of abundance for you. This is a path of you're in the right path, and you keep continuing what you're doing no matter what anybody says, because you are informing people the right things, right? Because remember, we have her Themis right here. She has oracular abilities to your 10th house, even though there might be questioning about it, like in terms of like how further does it go, right? So she, and again, in challenges of opportunities and abilities to show others. She has Sedna conjunct Themis and Ceres right here, so it's makes sense. People are not really getting it, and they're gonna get it eventually, even after death. Whatever, she'll probably most likely come into another body and have to work through that again. If not, she'll ascend. That's totally fine. Either way, things are being shown. Okay. Where else? 520, blah, 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 all these numbers. I should have just renamed them. Fuck, sometimes I don't like naming things. And there you go. Okay, so is that the one we went through? Did go through that? Okay. Her destiny is in her 3rd house. Makes sense. To inform, to educate, to learn. Fame is in her relationship with people. Jobs. Okay, she has square jobs. So the work that she's done before, she's kind of like, okay, there's that change. I remember her jobs. Okay, that's the job she does, and she is okay. The job she has is like that whole informing people and getting these things that she just knows how to work with, like how to be, you know, be honest with yourself, and like something to do with the single mother thing, but also something to do with just like the fact that it's like there's a new way to find your self-worth, right? Something to do revolving around self-worth. That's basically her job. And but she gets she either gets famous for it or infamous for it. Fame right here. Okay, which conjuncts her moon, so naturally it's a kind of a natural process for her. But with the intensity going through right now with Pluto, it's almost like peeling away what doesn't make sense, peeling away, like flaying fucking off like the whole what doesn't serve like her path and her purpose, because her moon is her chart ruler, so that's an important one, which is good because her moon is trine. Right, you can see this right here. Her moon is trine her north node, and Fame is trine her north node, and a bunch of other planets there too, I think. Her industry, I don't know, I don't really understand industry. It's not really job, like the field that she's in basically is in reflective analysis of your ego and how you what you know about that and how you relate with others. So that makes sense right there. Abundance is okay, in abundance in her health, okay. But earlier there was something else there. There was one of the asteroids, something to do with, was it Lucifer? No, I don't remember. Okay. Oh, she gets that's how she gets money from it. She earns money through the ability to be real. Right, you can see right here her self-worth. So it goes well with that. So I don't see any squares here, but again, I had to pick these asteroids, and I'm not focused on one specific topic. It's just her general reading of the chart. I'm sure that the other asteroids, if I mix them together, if I actually rearrange them, it will show something. But I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to do a general reading. Ooh, unrequited love. Things that didn't go her way, but she was devoted to her family. Okay. Interesting. But she wanted to show that. Okay, that explains that whole Clytia right here. is opposite, is in square to her ascendant. So with the how she grew up with Adonis right there was a lot of love in their family, I would say, but it wasn't. Like I said, there was what was it? What was asteroid? Something like it was always on the down low. It feels like Antigone was there. No, that's her 12th house. Mm, so Adonis. So yeah, there must have been a lot of love there, but again, it was a little too serious, and but she didn't. In specifically like her 4th house, any issues there because she devoted. It, maybe there was an abandonment sort of stuff. That's why she talks about the single motherhood thing as well. Um, and Daphne, squared. It's squared Daphne. What was Daphne about again? Undying commitment, or something like that. Revelation of devotion. Romantic fears. Okay, so yeah, that kind of makes sense. Was the experience that she's had with abandonment? Because when you have 4th house issues, it affects your relationship. It's actually the root of it. I've been studying that in synastry, so that kind of explains it. Why Daphne would be in her 12th house. So she constantly has to reflect through that. She has to kind of show that maybe she's not into a relationship until they're, she talks about men that are narcissistic, men that are the nice guys. So it's basically imbalanced men. Okay, that makes total sense. So I understand why there's a lot of these challenges with fear of romantic stuff. It is a fear, and I'm sure she knows that. But it's more like, but she has to stick to her guns because she has to be devoted. Remember, her vest is conjunct her ascendant, so she, in a way, she has this sort of like she embodies that she has to be this more. She has to be more focused on herself, focus more on her own sense of her own home within, her own inner self, like her self home. I don't know if that makes sense, right? But and really commit to that. Even though her North Node is with sort of relationships, not necessarily relationships, but like helping others. It's like she needs to process all this stuff and not be too like, well, that relationship will work for me. And it's even way beyond that. It's kind of just like, if she ever finds someone who is already much evolved and can just be there, period, then I think that would probably work for her. But it's not necessary because that search for another person it's secondary. That's exactly what it is. Oh, okay. Even though she has fears for those, she might find different types of relationships. Maybe not necessarily amorous ones, but maybe like friendship ones in her community, because he has more right here. Hera, jealousy. Okay, with her. Okay, people might have issues with that. So, I don't know much about Hera. Anteros. An- hmm. Anteros in her 11th house is like she helps people grow. She's the one. She's the one who's kind of basically the one who helped people mature. That's all I can say about Antares. Antares is actually conjuncting her at 17 degrees in Gemini, so that means it's conjunct her Mercury. Okay, and no, not Apollo. Mercury. So that means it is. Yeah, she's expressing ideas. She's had these ideas. It could be set out. It could be something more like for herself, but how to assist in maturity, like in terms of how to be that kind of guide of towards maturity. Persephone, dark side. Okay, Eros, Persephone, right here. Persephone's transiting her Eros, her natal Eros. We didn't go through Eros right here, but Eros is earthly sort of passion and love, and it's not just love though. It's like ultimate, but it's her ability to love herself and her any sort of issues with her health, and really find that herself. And Persephone there, it's kind of like bringing back the dark side of that and kind of freeing herself from the whole like issues of like doubting herself. Like self-love is probably an issue, is a theme here, like real self-love. It is 18 degrees, so it's opposite of Mercury. Okay, so being her able to contemplate on that and actually process it mentally at least. She has Psyche, which is like ultimate, like unconditional giving of shared love. She naturally has that. So that's why she continues what she does, and that's the Psyche. It's part of her transformational process in the 8th house. The moon is actually right here. It's conjunct her Psyche. So bringing up emotions and ups and downs and cycles and all those things regarding all that stuff. It's Psyche. I know I'm not going into in depth with these transits and these asteroids, but that's not what I meant to do today. All right. I think that's about it. I think that was kind of interesting. I don't know about you, but that was fun. It's just like a random reading of a chart. I'm pretty sure I've gone over an hour. However you saw that, however you perceived it, if you have any questions, do write in the comments below. It's not specific. It's not specified. It wasn't a specific theme or anything like that at all. But that's that. So I hope that kind of gives a bit of insight into Teal Swan. There's more to say. There's always more to say. It's never ending, and I love that. So that's a good thing. Because why would you, if you knew someone completely, why? It's kind of boring, right? So anyways, I hope that helps. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys later.